and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, you know our program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Want to give a shout out to James Braun, our producer. He has passed on, but his memory is still with us. His work is still with us. We want to continue to preserve that memory as we go forward with our program. A shout out to Kaki, his sister, has been taking care of him for the past several months, and we really hope that she's doing okay, and we look forward to hearing from her very soon. We're here without Norm McCarter, who is our normal in-studio audience of one, but he's out in the wonder world. I think Willie H.
it's the Bahamas.
Yeah, I figured Willie H. should be able to tell us, a little bit about the vacation that Norm is taking. Willie is, of course, our 21st century citizen who understands all of this technology and enables us to be able to live stream this program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. You guys can call in at 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104.
So I want to take today's program, Will, and talk about, the Republican mantra has been that the November 3rd, 2020 election was stolen. And their campaign thing is stop the steal, stop the steal. But I want you to understand that they're doing that because they attempted to steal the election. And instead of allowing the public to focus on them and their attempts to steal the election, they tried to create a false narrative that it was the Democrats and the progressives and the liberals that they stole the election from Donald Trump.
Wow.
So I want to use this program to show you that the Republicans, a certain set of the Republicans, with apparently either silent support or formal nodding support, they actually conspired to steal the election from the people of the United States. I went to an article written by Mary Yang. She was writing for The Guardian online magazine about a previously unseen memo that details Trump's plot to subvert election results. Whenever Trump starts railing at you that you did something, you can know for certain that means Trump already did what it is he's railing at you that you did. He actually had done it already. He wasn't going to do it. He already had done it. And to shift the onus off of himself, he charges you with the crime that he committed and gets you so busy defending yourself against the charge that he makes against you that you don't spend any time investigating and proving that he's the one who did this crime in the first place. But wow. This is starting to unravel. This memo obtained by the New York Times describes a three-pronged plan to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory on January 6th of 2021. A previously unseen internal memo from the 2020 Trump campaign, it describes in detail the plot by Donald Trump and his lawyers to subvert election results in 6 states, according to a copy obtained by the New York Times. The memo describes a three-pronged plan to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory on January 6th. That involved coordinating with Republican electors and campaign attorneys in 6 states. We're not talking about people who, your cousin's, girlfriend's, a nephew, that you just took off the street. We're not talking about folks like that. We're talking about people who are lawyers. We're talking about people who are officers of the court. We're talking about people who were elected officials in their states who actually signed these fake electoral college certificates saying that they were the electoral college slate members for their party and awarding these votes to Donald Trump that were actually votes electoral college votes that should have been awarded and eventually were awarded to Joe Biden. So, quoting the article, it says that they were involved. These officials were involved in coordinating with Republican electors and campaign attorneys in 6 states, as well as Mike Pence. It also emphasized that the importance of the participation by all 6 states and messaging about this being a routine measure, as well as logistics regarding what is now known as the fake elector scheme. When I talk about what they talk about in terms of trying to make the fake electors issue routine or normal, instead of letting it come across as if an alternate slate of electors has been named by the Republican Party and they're going to fight to have themselves seated, against the legitimate electoral college slate, Republican slate members. Instead of allowing, in other words, making it a big fuss, a big hullabaloo, right. They did it as if it was routine. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to submit this alternate state of electors because if it turns out that Biden didn't get as many votes as they thought he got, he might not have won that state, and therefore an alternate state of electors would have to be made available to cast the electoral college votes for that state. So we just want to get in front of the process, right now, and make sure that we got our electors in place.
Right.
So it sounded like it was routine. People didn't take it as if a crime was being committed, but in fact, the crime was being committed in broad daylight. This letter was written by Kenneth Chesebro, an attorney associated with Trump, who is believed to be one of the 6 unnamed co-conspirators in the indictment against Trump over his attempt to subvert the 2020 election results. Much of Chesebro's sounds like some kind of a product, doesn't it? Much of Chesebro's actions have been revealed through previous memos and through the January 6th investigation last year. But this memo brings further details to light about the fake electors scheme that he concocted. It was addressed to Wisconsin lawyer James Trupis, the lead attorney for the Trump campaign in Wisconsin. He oversaw the fake electors scheme in his state. So we're not talking about something isolated. We're not talking about somebody trying to trick, one person.
Right.
We're talking about the entire apparatus of in this case, the Wisconsin State Republican Party was what's the word? They were not just compliant. They colluded to
colluded.
Right, that word colluded, right? They colluded to enact this fake elector scheme.
Right, colluded sounds improper.
Right,
that's a right good word.
Yep. So Trupis, who oversaw the fake elector scheme in Wisconsin, filed a lawsuit in December of 2020, asking the Wisconsin State Supreme Court to throw out hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots, saying that they violated voting requirements. The court ultimately rejected the lawsuit because there was no basis for it. The point here is that what James Trupis was doing, working with Kenneth Chesebro, what they were doing in Wisconsin and what was done in 5 other states, is they were throwing out or attempting to throw out or cancel the votes of several 100,000 voters in each of these states.
Yeah, you say Chesebro?
Chesebro.
That sounds cheesy to me.
Yep, and he definitely this was a cheesy deal.
Yeah.
But they got
cheesy brothers.
They got it far enough that they got the fake electors all the way to the National Archives and Records Administration.
You say colluded Chesebro.
Colluded.
That all sounds polluted, included, cheesy.
You know how these words kind of start running together, right?
And it sounds, it's right on point. And all the words identify what's happening.
Absolutely. This Kenneth Chesebro wrote to this Wisconsin lawyer, James Trupis, who was the lead attorney for the a Republican campaign.
Troopers even sound like one of Trump organizations. Man,
it's like he was named for. He was born.
These guys was born for this corruption.
Right. He was stamped in the womb. He was stamped, with a brand.
It was all born for this. Oh,
I'm one of the Trump people, and so Cheesebro wrote to Troopers and said that he says it seems feasible. This is a quote now. It seems feasible the Trump campaign could subvert Biden's victory. His plan would force the members of Congress, quoting him now, would force the members of Congress, the media, and the American people to focus on the substantive evidence of illegal election and counting activities in the 6 contested states, provided that these 3 things happen. There were 3 steps that had to occur in order for this to be successful. The first, the Republican electors in all 6 states, that would include in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, that they would each meet and cast their votes for Trump on December 14th of 2020. That was the last day that you had to send the certification of the electors from each state, to send that up to Congress, so that these votes could then be read at the joint session of Congress on January 6th. So the last date that you had that you could do that was December 14th of 2020. So each of these states had to come up with these fake electors and have them sign certificates certifying that they were the electors elected in their states to represent the Republican Party and to represent who actually won the Electoral College votes in that state. So if you had 10 Electoral College votes, you'd have 10 electors from that were nominated by the Republican Party. If if Joe Biden won, then the 10 electors that were on the slate for the Democratic Party, they would go to the delegate convention on December 14th. If Trump had won, he would have 10 people on the Republican slate that would go on December 14th to the Electoral College Assembly, where they would then ratify the votes of each state.
Right.
Once they did that, each state would then send their ratified votes to the joint session of Congress that was to meet on January 6th. That's the system that the United States has. But of course, in the new Republican Donald Trump party, we don't have a system. We have a system that can be manipulated, not a system that we're bound by. So if Trump finds that the system works in a way that doesn't work to his advantage, then his obligation is to change the system. Right. Let's just cheat. Right. I mean, you know how we used to do in the bowling alley. If you can't win playing fair, cheat.
Well, I don't think Trump would call it cheating. I think he'd call it manipulating the process.
I know, that's my word. Okay, cheating. Okay, so that was the first thing you had to do, is you had to get these alternate legislators before the 14th of December, so that they would be the ones who would be voted on and sent to the joint session of Congress on January 6th. Then attorneys for each of the 6 states would simultaneously file lawsuits that would lead to either a Trump victory or a Biden loss, which would be pending on January 6th, the certification date. So what they're talking about there is, in addition to you setting up these alternate electors, you would also have to have a lawsuit going on that would already have been filed before before December 14th. You had to have a lawsuit filed that challenged the Electoral College votes that were being counted as a result of the November 3rd, 2020 election. Right. So by having a lawsuit, you could say that the Electoral College votes that are being certified from each state are up in the air, at least for these 6 states. Now, these 6 states between them have 84 electoral college votes.
Mm-hmm.
If Joe Biden, I think he won 331 electoral college votes, if he lost 84, he'd be down around 230 or 225 electoral college votes, way away from the 270 electoral college votes he would have needed to be able to win.
Right.
Trump could have picked up enough votes where he'd wind up with 270 electoral college votes. I mean, that was what this thing was all about. But the scheme was first to get these alternative electors voted on or certified and sent to the joint session of Congress, so that either Mike Pence would read the election results from these false or fake electors, or Mike Pence would say, we got a problem, folks. We have two different slates of electors. I don't know who's right and who's wrong, but we can't go any further until we get this all straightened out. It may have to go to the courts. That would take time. Who would be the president during the course of that time?
Mr. Trump.
Exactly. And the more time he had to continue to keep manipulating the system.
Because he's the president, right?
Right, cheating the system, he could eventually figure out a way for him to keep the presidency, deny it to Joe Biden, and continue to rule as a usurper.
Right.
You know, that's exactly what he was attempting to get done.
Right.
So getting these lawsuits in before December 14th guaranteed you the ability to be able to say that the election results were up in the air. They weren't certain yet. And because they weren't certain, you would not be able to ratify the Electoral College votes for all of these states.
Mr. Hare, what makes me a little fearful now is that we know that Mr. Trump is coming back. And I'm sure now he has an A plan, a B plan, a C plan. No matter what happens, he's going to run, and he plans to win. Even if he don't win, I'm sure he got. And what's scary is that he's probably come up with something to assure himself that he's in, no matter if he gets the votes or not. And
no matter how it goes down, there are enough. How shall I say? There are so many protocols, so many processes you have to go through in order for you to defeat somebody like Donald Trump, who's trying to manipulate and whatever he's doing. Even if he loses the 2024 election, there's still systems you would have to go through in order to put this man in jail. And you know what I mean? If he gets convicted of any of these things that he's been accused of.
And not only that, then we got to worry about his supporters. They will do anything to make sure this man
and they will vote things in place to change the rules so that a person who has been convicted of doing whatever it is that Donald Trump has been indicted for, that you would no longer be thrown out of office for that, or you'd no longer be put in jail for that, or because you're the president, you get to live in a palace, for the rest of your life.
Let me ask this question, Mr. Hare. This is probably a hard question. You may not even probably answer it. Is it possible there could be a revolution? Like he gets in and it's like close, and his supporters say, no, we're not having it this time. You're getting in. And other people say, no, we're not having it this time.
Listen.
Is there a possibility?
The media keeps telling you that the election is 43% are for Joe Biden and 43% are for Donald Trump.
Right.
They want you to believe that half the people in the country think that somebody who is insidious, as ridiculous, and as contemptuous as Donald Trump is, that he's favored by half the people in the United States. Why are they doing that? Because if we get to election season and we end up with a razor-thin election where somebody got 50.1% of the vote and somebody else got 49.9% of the vote, that's going to be so close that just as you saw what went down in November of 2020, Donald Trump lost the election by over almost 7.5 million votes.
Right.
They said that, it was close, and the Democrats stole the election from the Republicans. Well, imagine if the result was 1 million a difference or 500,000 difference, or 40,000 difference, or as happened in 2020, you had 500 votes where you had some hanging chads, on the vote, and they couldn't come up with whether those votes went to Al Gore or to George Bush, but they awarded the votes to George Bush. Al Gore, rather than put the country through, a crisis that would have torn the country apart, he said, "I'll accept my fate, and I'll concede the election so that we can move forward as a country."
That was honorable.
Right. And when have you seen honor since then?
You ain't getting it from Trump. And even if Biden is honorable, that's you.
I shouldn't say that. We did have 8 years of Obama, and we had honor during that time period.
The way I've been hearing so many things that's been bothering me, Mr. Hare. Even with Obama, I got people, my community, been talking about, oh, well, Obama didn't do this, Obama didn't do that.
And they're right. But what people don't understand is Obama was the executive officer of the executive branch of government. He can't authorize spending. Spending is authorized by Congress, by Constitution, not even by law, by the Constitution. So there are things that Obama wanted to do. And then remember, a lot of the things that Obama wanted to do, a majority of people in this country didn't want to see done.
Right.
Obama said, this global warming thing is real. Why y'all dragging your feet? We got to roll. We got to start doing alternative energy right now. We got to start making commitments to what we're going to do right now. I'm signing the Paris Accords right now so that we could be a part of an international team to lower the amount of carbon dioxide that we're putting into the atmosphere. Democrats voted against that. Not just Obama, just Republicans, Democrats voted against that. When Obama's trying to get legislation that allows you to be able to use education funds in a way that does social things as well as doing academic things, because it would help you to achieve your academic objectives, Democrats voted against that, as well as Republicans voting against that. So, people always whine that Obama didn't do this and didn't do that. Obama was not king. He couldn't snap his fingers and say, everybody jump this way or jump that way.
The way that I guess Trump wants to do.
Exactly. And if you allow Trump to become president again, you'll stop having a president. You'll have Idi Amin. Dada. Well, that's what Idi Amin in Uganda called himself. He said Dada for life. That meant he was president for life. That's what Donald Trump wanted to be. So, and I guess, when he passes on, he'll name his daughter Ivanka. She'll be the next president, and she'll sashay, for us and whatnot. So the third piece in this scheme was on the day that Congress meets to certify the electors, Mike Pence, presiding over the joint session, would take the position that it is his constitutional power and duty alone as president of the Senate to both open and count the votes that have been submitted by the various states. But if I have two competing slates of electors for a particular slate, I don't know which of these slates I should obey. I don't have a court ruling on which slate to obey. Therefore, I can't read that state's electoral college votes. If I can't read that state's electoral college votes into the record, we may end up with Joe Biden not having enough delegates to get to the 270 electoral college vote threshold, or we may end up with neither Biden nor Trump having enough electoral college votes. If that occurred, see, because I said there was three things that had to happen, but when these three things happen, they're not done. If those three things that I mentioned happen, then something else would occur.
Like what?
The election would be sent to the state legislatures in each of the states.
Okay.
So instead of your instead of your popular vote counting or your electoral college votes counting, you would then go to each of the 50 states plus Washington, D.C. You would have a meeting of a joint session of the state senators and the state assembly people in each of the states. They would vote for who they believe should be the president. They won't vote for the Electoral College. They'll vote for who they believe should be the president.
So the Republicans have more power. They got more people in position, correct?
Well, what would happen is each state gets the same number of votes. They get one vote. So you get the New York State, 21 million people, and you get one vote. So you got I think it's 63 state senators in New York State, and 150 assemblymen in New York State. So those 213 people would vote collectively, and whoever got the majority vote, let's say that Trump got the majority vote, then the one vote for New York State would go to Donald Trump. If the majority had voted for Joe Biden, then one vote would go from New York State for Joe Biden. But every state only gets one vote. Now, how does that become, or what's the problem with that? Well, the system, the way it's set up, is in favor of the small population rural states, which get the same number of votes as the high population states. So let's take a state like Iowa. And I just want you to know something odd about Iowa. Iowa as a state has 99 counties, but they have something like 3.5 million voters. You have 1 million voters in Erie County alone. How does Erie County end up with, how does New York State end up with one vote and Iowa end up with one vote when Iowa's got maybe 3 million people in their population and New York State has 21 million people in its population? Yeah. California has, I think it's pretty close to 43, or maybe it's more than that now. It might be 54 million in California. It's a big number, but they only count as one. Right. So when you look at it that way, all those states that have a majority Republicans in the combined state and assembly and state Senate, all of those states would wind up voting for the Republican. So you would have essentially maybe 30% or 25% of the population in those Republican-controlled states, but they would have maybe 30 votes. And in the Democratic-controlled states, you'd have 20 states that are a majority Democrat, and the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. So you'd end up with maybe 75 or 80% of the vote being in those more populous states, but they only had 20 of the 53 possible votes that were, or the 50 possible votes that were available. The more populous states collectively would only have about 20. That seems to me patently undemocratic. That's not one man, one vote.
But New York would be Democratic, correct?
Right. Okay. But Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, New Mexico, Georgia, their state legislatures are either majority a Republican or very close to majority a Republican. So when you look at these small places like Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, these are states where there are more cows than there are people, in the states. So they would wind up being the ones who would make the decision about who the next president would have been. Right. That would have allowed Donald Trump to have manipulated the systems of the United States through just aggressive criminal actions to manipulate the systems of the United States so that he winds up becoming the president again, even though he lost the election. That's what this was all about. Donald Trump, it was Donald Trump and his forces who were attempting to steal the election. That's the point that I'm trying to make here.
And also the further point is that this could happen again. Is that what you're saying? Or this could happen?
Well, if this goes down this time, then it becomes the norm. Remember, whatever you let slide becomes the norm the following year.
Okay.
So you remember when that guy named, I think his name was Joe Wilson or something like that, when Obama was in his first State of the Union address, and he jumps out and says, "You lie, you lie." People hadn't done that in 50 years or 80 years,
Mm-hmm.
because we had gotten better as a people and whatnot, right? But this Joe, whatever his name is, guy, he shouts this out to embarrass Obama.
Right.
But what happens is now you got Marjorie Taylor Greene, leaping up in Joe Biden's face saying, you lie, and the same situation is occurring again. Because we allowed it to go on before, it now has become the norm.
Right.
And so that's what's going to happen with these protocols if we don't do something about it right now. So listen, we got to take a quick break and talk to our sponsors. Please don't go away. Look forward to talking on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
With Dottie Gap.
I want you guys to stay tuned at 10 a.m. for Talia Talks. 10 a.m. Talia Talks. Community talk, y'all. Right here on 91.3 FM. WBNY.
Make history every day. Okay.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome back, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here.
So we're talking about what I think is lockdown proven fact that the Donald Trump and his minions literally attempted to steal, in fact, are still trying to steal the November 2020 election from Joe Biden and deliver the election to Donald Trump.
Yeah, they're setting up shop now, make sure everything's in place, all the legislation and rulings. So they setting up shop.
And it's important for us to understand that this is not like a set of 19 crooks, spread across 6 states who were attempting to do something insidious. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the actual apparatus of the state party in at least 6 states, where the party's apparatus itself, the people that are the chairs of the local board of election, people that are the chairs of the state party, political party, and so on, people who are lawyers, people that are holders of responsible positions, people that are business owners, and so on. We're talking about those kinds of people were the ones who made up the matrix of folks that were engaged in this conspiracy to defraud the United States of its election. Remember the last indictment that Jack Smith rendered against Donald Trump. One of the issues was denying your right to for your vote to be counted, right? Or for first denying your right to vote, period. And then even if you did vote, the right for your vote to be counted, defrauding the United States of the legitimate election that the United States had run in November of 2020. These are the actual crimes that were being committed by Trump and his forces. I went to an article written by Amy Sherman. It was in PolitiFact, entitled "What You Need to Know About the Fake Trump Electors." And she talks in this article about in the several weeks following the 2020 election, groups of electors gathered in state capitals around the country to sign certificates affirming which state or which candidate won their state. So, you know, if you had 10 electoral college votes for your state and your state went to Donald Trump, then you would have 10 electors who would sign certificates casting your state's electoral college votes for Donald Trump. And conversely, you would do it if the votes went for Joe Biden. But on that same day, December 14th, that was the last day that you had to come together and have this meeting in your state to have your electoral college votes certified for your state and sent on to the National Archives. On that day, December 14, 2020, something unusual happened. In several battleground states where Joe Biden had defeated Donald Trump, representatives of the losing side decided that they too would gather as purported electors to sign certificates falsely attesting to a Trump win and submit them for approval by the Congress. So that when Congress had the meeting on January 6th, they open up the envelopes, there'd be two different sets of electors in the envelope. Now, of course, that's going to cause confusion. Somebody's going to say, where do these other electors come from? Which one is the right set and which one is the wrong set?
Right.
And then somebody's going to say, well, we don't know. We never had we didn't know that this occurred. We're going to have some kind of a proceeding.
Right.
All that stuff means time. That means now we got to, and who mans the proceeding? Is it manned by political parties? Is it manned by Congress? Is it manned by a judicial process, you know, a court? Who mans the proceeding?
Right.
And so on. So all of these things have to be done. That means you're not going to have a certification of the election on January 6th. It'll take some time after that before the election can be certified.
Right.
All during the course of that time period, Donald Trump is going to be working away with people.
Oh, you know he is.
Trying to find a way for him to hold on to power, right, and not concede power.
Right.
So months after this situation had occurred, American Oversight, which is a watchdog group that sought to hold Trump accountable through public records, published the phony certificates, calling them part of a failed attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election. This was no small caper, according to this report, by a few disappointed Trump loyalists. The fake electoral certificates were signed by Republican state lawmakers and party officials in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, and New Mexico, states accounting for a combined 84 electoral college votes. And like the violent insurrectionists who came to the Capitol on January 6th with their knives and bats and other weapons, these fake electors sought to overturn a democratic election through extra-legal means. They did so in a coordinated effort, mostly out in the open and through official channels. Remember what I've been saying this all along. Hitler did not use guns to become chancellor of Germany.
Right.
He started out as a low-level guy, like a council person, went from there to being an alderman or whatever the next step was, went from there to being a state assembly person to being a state Senate person. And he built a large base, Democratic base for himself. And then once he was able to get a strong enough base, he ran for chancellor and won the chancellorship through regular democratic processes. Of course, the democratic processes had been manipulated by him over the course of the previous 10 or 15 years because they'd get together with their nationalist party, friends, and they would do things to manipulate the rules of the election so that their people could vote more, and the people that didn't like him would vote less.
Right.
And they kept doing that and they kept changing the rules and manipulating the processes until they got control of the electoral process in a way where only he could win.
And Mr. Hare, that is happening. The reason I say that is happening because even in my community, people of color, when I talk to them, it's like, oh, Biden is not doing this, Biden is not doing that, which lets me know they may not vote for Trump, but that means now they're probably like, he's not doing a great job, so what's the use?
They won't vote at all.
Like you just said. And so Hitler kind of manipulate and get them out of the process. So that means now more of the Republicans, more of the conservatives will vote, and they're going to hold. They're going to vote.
Right. So so Hitler used the protocols, the structure of German democracy in order to steal democracy away from the German people. That is exactly what Donald Trump, has been trying to do. And he told you if he wins, he's going to do more of that. He says, I'm going to punish all of those people that came against me, that testified against me, that didn't say that I was a wonderful person.
Right.
I'm coming to get all of those people.
So all those checks and balances that we have in place now, he's going to get rid of them and rule like a king.
Yep. That's not me making that up. That's what he said that he was going to do. So I think Jeffrey Mandel, who's the president of the Wisconsin democracy group called Law Forward, he said this is like the mother of all heist movies. The movies where somebody heists a train or something. This is the mother of all heist movies. He says he had asked state and local officials in early 2021 to investigate the certificate signed by 10 people in his state. It was an attempt by 10 people to disregard the votes of 3.3 million people, 3.3 million of their neighbors, and decide that they knew best and disregard the will of the voters so that they could hijack Wisconsin's participation in choosing the next president. Like the rioters, they failed, but their efforts are drawing renewed attention under the Justice Department. According to CNN, the agency is investigating these fake certificates, and so are state prosecutors. And the January 6th committee, of course, has done a great job in helping people to understand how this fake elections process unfolded, who was doing it, what their goal was, and how you can evidence that this had actually been done. So what are the certificates, and what do the certificates say? Every 4 years, when voters cast ballots in a presidential election, they're choosing between slates of electors pledged to one of the candidates, in this case, either Biden or Trump. I know this sounds weird, but in America, for the president, even though we do this for all other elections, in every other election in the United States, you are voting for the person that's going to hold the office if they win. But that's not true for the presidency. For the presidency, you vote for the elector, and then the elector votes for the president that they said they're committed to. The reason for that basically is if you have a situation where there's some doubt, let's suppose you don't end up with votes for just two parties. Let's suppose you have a number of votes where the Peace and Freedom Party over here, the Working Families Party over there, the Conservative Party over here, they all got some national lift and had electoral votes awarded to them. Some states you don't get all of the electoral votes. You only get a percentage based on what your percentage of the vote was. So let's suppose you ended up with a situation where you didn't have 270 electoral college votes committed to any one of the candidates. If that's the case, then the electors would be free to vote for somebody other than the person who nominated them to be their elector on the electoral college slate for their state. Does that make sense? So in your state, you would have 10 or so in Wisconsin, there's 10 electoral college votes for Wisconsin.
Okay.
So for the Republicans, they would have a slate of 10 people who would be the ones who would cast the electoral college votes for for Wisconsin for the Republican candidate if the Republican candidate won the vote. If it was if the Democratic candidate won the vote, you'd have 10 delegates that were nominated to cast the votes for the Democratic candidate.
In that same state now?
In that same state.
Okay.
Every state would do the same thing.
Okay.
Right? So generally you would have 100% of the Electoral College vote would go to whoever won that state.
Okay.
There are some states, however, that don't do it that way. Some states, if you won 48% of the vote, you only get 48% of the delegates. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you could end up with fractions of the delegates for that state, part going to one candidate and part going to another candidate.
Oh, so you can have 0.5?
I'm not sure if you can have 0.5, but it may be that. I'm not sure what they do. Let's suppose you had there's 10 delegates, electoral college votes for that state, and let's suppose you had somebody who won, 10.5% of the vote. Does that person get 1.5 delegates? I don't know how that works, right? Okay. So I'm just saying there's some iffy stuff in the way our system is created. But the point is, every fourth year, the basic system is each party of the two-party system, they create a slate of delegates representing their party. And if their party's candidate wins, then that slate of delegates goes to the delegate convention that happens on December 14th. Mm-hmm. And when they go to the delegate convention on December 14th, they cast the votes for their party for whoever won the election for their state. Once that's done, and they sent those certified electors, certificates of the electors up to the National Archives, it goes to the joint session of Congress on January 6th. Mm-hmm. And on January 6th, the vice president, who is the actual president of the Senate, the vice president then reads or has somebody read. I think he actually reads the votes because the Electoral College votes are sent to the vice president at this joint session in a sealed envelope for each state. Mm-hmm. So when the vice president receives these votes, he's receiving them from an object that's being opened for the first time. So nobody's supposed to have tampered with what's inside the envelope. Right. Then the vice president reads what's inside the envelope. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin, 10 votes, Joe Biden, blah, 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 right? So that's what's supposed to occur. Let's suppose that when he opens the envelope, there's two sets of electoral college electors. Mm-hmm. So instead of there being 10 votes from the Democratic Party for the Joe Biden, who was the nominee of the Democratic Party, you'd end up with 20 votes being submitted, 10 being submitted for Joe Biden and 10 being submitted for Donald Trump.
Confusion.
Exactly. Now, what does Joe Biden do? He's got a whole court right there. So does he make a decision on his own? Whose vote, do I count? Do I count neither of the votes? Do I count, 10 of the votes? What do I do?
It almost seems like the best thing to do, don't count those, right?
Well, that would be in Trump's interest. If you don't count the votes,
because now he got
then
more,
he gets less of the votes that he needs to get to that 270 vote threshold.
So it sounds like either way, it's going to be in favor. Any confusion is going to be in favor of
Donald Trump. Yep.
Wow.
So I went to this just to talk about who these electors are. There are 538 total electors in the country, mm-hmm. one for each U.S. senator and for each U.S. congressperson, plus 3 for Washington, D.C. The elector's role is spelled out in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution. That clause was amended 2 times, once in 1804 and once in 1961. In general, state parties file slates of names for who the electors will be. They include people with ties to those state parties, like current and former party officials, state lawmakers, party activists. They're selected either at state party conventions or at party central committees. In other words, the Democrats could have a central committee meeting. I don't know who would be on it. Let's say it would just be a convening of the state committeemen in New York State. So you could end up with, maybe 100 people making a decision under this state legislative protocol. Mm-hmm. You could have 100 people making a decision on behalf of 21 million people. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem quite democratic, does it?
No. And you know that they're going to have, a lot of them going to have conservative views, Republican views. Even if they're Democrat, they're still going to have some conservative.
Well, especially among the Democrats, you always have a wide range of views, right? Because they're the Big Ten party.
Right.
So if Biden, for example, wins a particular state, his slate of electors would gather weeks before Election Day to sign a certificate reflecting their votes for Biden. Mm-hmm. The certificates are forwarded to Congress, but the certificates have to be forwarded before December 14th, because that's when the Electoral College meets. Mm-hmm. Most of the fake certificates were put forward as if they were real ones. They had a header on them that said things like, quote, certificate of the votes of the 2020 electors. So anybody who looked at that would think this was a certificate of the vote of 2020 electors, when in fact it wasn't. But they just said that. They also had on here, one of them says, these electors, quote, being duly elected and qualified electors. When they weren't duly elected and qualified electors, their names did not even appear on the ballot when the votes were being cast. Wow. So how could they possibly be duly qualified electors? Mm-hmm. Then it says the certificates say that they gathered to vote for Trump and are signed by anywhere from 5 to 20 people, depending on the number of Electoral College votes for that state. The certificates in Pennsylvania and New Mexico, apparently they realized there was some legal liability here. So they had their certificates structured to suggest that they would be the electors if it was later determined that they were the electors through a final court order. So they just hedged their bet. But for the other 5 states, the documents state that they were sent to the National Archives and state officials, including governors or secretaries of state. What Norman Eisen says, he was special counsel to the House Judiciary Committee during the first Trump impeachment inquiry. He said this was not freelancing. This was a coordinated effort. He said that these appear to be false documents that were submitted to the federal government. They were handed in to the National Archives as the genuine articles are supposed to be. The real electoral certificates, which were accepted by Congress, are on the website of the National Archives and Records Administration. So this is federal crimes. This is submitting a false instrument to the federal government for the purpose of achieving a goal that was illegal for you to achieve in the first place. Right. So who signed these certificates? Certificates were signed by well-known Republicans, including elected officials, party leaders. Like, for example, in Arizona, the signers included Dr. Kelly Ward, who was the state Republican Party chair. The chairperson of the Arizona State Republican Party signed this fake elector certificate, saying that she was an elector. Her husband, Dr. Michael Ward, also signed. It was also signed by James Lemon, who was running for the U.S. Senate, and by State Representative Jake Hoffman. Jake Hoffman, when he was asked by a reporter why he signed the document, he says, well, in unprecedented times, unprecedented actions occur. What was unprecedented? That Donald Trump might lose the election. That would be unprecedented, right? So we have to change the rules. Mm-hmm. So he says that due to litigation over the election results, he, quote, felt it appropriate to provide Congress and Vice President Pence with dueling options. He actually said this while he was laughing. He thought this was funny. In Georgia, fake election certificate signers, including State Senator Burt Jones, who was running for lieutenant governor, and included David Schaefer, who was Georgia's state party chair. In Michigan, the co-chair of the Michigan State Party, Meshawn Maddock. So you can see these are the insiders in the Republican party apparatus. They're the ones who are not only orchestrating this scheme, they are the ones who populated the scheme. They basically appointed themselves to become the fake electors in this effort. Amy Facinello, a Grand Blanc Board of Education member, Stanley Grott, who was the township clerk of Shelby County. These were important people in these states. Signers in Nevada included party officials in New Mexico. One of the signers was a business person, Jewel Padrell. This other fellow, this is one that was laughing. This is the guy from, his name was Jewel Powell. He told the Las Cruz Sun News that he had no regrets about signing the certificate now that the election is over. He says, now that the election is over, he says, why are we talking about it? While he was laughing, he says, how can you undermine an election that's already been done? He thought this was all funny, but it's not funny, right? And it would not be funny. John Eastman, who was a lawyer allied with Donald Trump, wrote a memo explaining a January 6th scenario based on the submission of 7 dual slates of electors to Pence. Eastman proposed that Pence announce that he had multiple slates of electors due to ongoing disputes in 7 states. No electors from those states could be valid. That would have tipped the election to Donald Trump. That's what this scheme was all about. I just wanted to lay this out for our public, that the Stop the Steal campaign, there was a Stop the Steal campaign, but it should have been stop the Republicans and Donald Trump from stealing the election, not to stop Joe Biden, who actually won the election. He was not stealing the election. He won the election outright. It was the Republicans and Donald Trump that stole and continue to try to steal the election from the public in the United States. And that is really what we need to get our arms wrapped around.
Right.
Hopefully, if people get this into their heads, they'll be making different decisions about which of these 2 candidates they'd want to see become the next president of the United States. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Monday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. Stay tuned for Talia Rodriguez in the Let's Talk Business. I think this is what we said. Yo hablo de negocios. Let's talk business. We'll see you all then.
All right.